Imagine a world where an empire appears invincible, but crumbles silently from within. What if everything you've been taught about strength is wrong? Hidden debts, factories that never truly produce, families struggling while leaders hide the truth. The mighty fall not with war, but with numbers. In the next few minutes, you'll see the secret forces that destroyed the world's largest superpower, forces nobody talks about. We'll explain everything in this video, step by step, don't skip it. The war ends without sound. No final explosion, no closing anthem. Just wind moving through ruins where cities once breathed. Victory arrives quietly, stepping over ashes. From the west to the east, the land looks the same, burned, flattened, silent. Millions return home expecting life to resume. Instead, they find absence. Streets without windows, factories without roofs, homes without doors, and beneath everything, a deeper emptiness, the kind that cannot be rebuilt with bricks. The Soviet Union stands victorious, but it is a victory that feels strangely hollow. The flags still rise, the speeches still echo, but behind the words, the country is bleeding. Every road tells a story of retreat and advance. Every rail line is twisted metal. Every field carries scars where tanks once rested like iron beasts. The war took lives. Now it demands payment. In Moscow, the buildings still stand, but the rooms feel colder. Maps cover the walls. Ledgers pile high. The generals have gone home. The accountants remain. Numbers begin to speak louder than medals. How much steel is left? How many trains still run? How many mouths must be fed tomorrow morning? The answers are never enough. Across the countryside, families return to places that no longer resemble memory. A mother recognizes the tree where her house once stood. A father searches rubble for something solid enough to salvage. Children learn to stay quiet. Quiet means survival. Food arrives slowly, if at all. Bread is darker now, smaller, each slice measured, each crumb counted. Victory did not bring abundance. It brought ration cards. Factories that once produced tractors are ordered to rebuild themselves first. There is no money for new machines, only instructions. Workers arrive before sunrise. They leave after dark. Not because they are paid more, but because stopping feels dangerous. The machines scream like they are still at war. In the shadows of smokestacks, whispers travel faster than trains. About shortages, about promises already broken. But no one says it too loudly. Hope is fragile here. The government speaks of rebuilding a glorious future, of triumph, of strength. But strength requires resources, and resources are gone. Oil fields need repair. Mines are flooded. Railways are shattered arteries. Everything that once moved the nation forward now demands energy the nation does not have. Every ruble spent during the war has left a ghost behind, an unpaid echo. Inflation does not announce itself. It slips in quietly. A loaf costs a little more, then a little more again. Wages remain still, frozen like statues from another era. Savings begin to dissolve, slowly, painfully. People feel it in their hands before they understand it in their minds. A lifetime of labor buys less each week. In small apartments, families sit around empty tables pretending they are not hungry. Parents eat last, sometimes not at all. They tell stories instead. Stories about the future, stories about victory. Stories are cheaper than food. The state must rebuild cities, factories, farms, and armies all at once. It chooses what it knows best. Industry first, people later. Steel flows toward reconstruction projects that look impressive from a distance. Grand factories rise while villages wait. The gap widens quietly. Trains carry machinery past towns where people still heat rooms with broken furniture. Progress moves forward, but not evenly. Behind closed doors, officials face impossible arithmetic. Every choice creates another shortage somewhere else. Fix the railways, and housing collapses. Feed the cities, and farms starve. There is never enough to do everything. The debt of war presses harder each year. Not written on posters, not spoken in speeches, but it shapes every decision. Foreign currencies are watched carefully. Gold reserves guarded like secrets. Loans are discussed in hushed voices. Independence is spoken aloud. Dependence is lived silently. The empire survived the war, but its economy limps like a wounded soldier refusing to fall. Factories report success. The shelves say otherwise. The numbers look strong on paper. Reality does not cooperate. Production targets are met by counting things no one needs. The illusion grows thicker. People begin to understand that survival now requires adaptation, bartering, trading favors, saving scraps. The black market breathes beneath the surface, quiet but alive. It is not rebellion, it is necessity. The war took sons and daughters. Now peace takes futures. Young men return with medals but no work that matches their sacrifice. Young women carry memories they cannot share. Everyone is tired. The land is tired. Victory was supposed to end suffering. Instead, it changed its shape. The sound of bombs has faded. The sound of empty stomachs remains. And somewhere between the ruins and the rebuilding, the first cracks appear not in walls, but in belief. Not shouted, not declared, just felt, in the way people hesitate before trusting promises, in the way they count bread more carefully than words, in the way silence lingers longer after each official announcement. The war is over, but its shadow stretches forward, longer than anyone expected, darker than anyone admits, settling quietly over a nation that won everything except the peace it was promised, leaving behind a question that no victory parade can answer, growing heavier with each passing winter, each empty shelf, each unpaid cost, as the silence deepens and the bill waits to be paid. Morning arrives without warmth, not from the sun, not from certainty. Smoke rises before light does. Factories awaken the cities, not families. Sirens replace roosters. Metal replaces bread. Men and women move through the streets in silence, collars pulled tight, eyes forward. They do not talk about hunger. Hunger listens. Inside the factories, machines roar like beasts that never sleep. The noise is constant, relentless. It drowns thought. It drowns doubt. Hands bleed quietly. Fingers stiffen in winter air that leaks through broken windows patched with paper and hope. The work is heavy. The hours endless. They are told production is victory continued. That every bolt forged, every plate pressed, brings the future closer. But the future does not stand in line with them at dawn. At lunch, there is no lunch, only pauses. Thermos lids open to steam that smells thin, soup watered down until it barely remembers what it was meant to be. Bread slices are small now, smaller than yesterday. Each bite chewed slowly, not to enjoy it, but to make it last longer. No one complains out loud. Complaints waste energy. At home, ration cards are folded and unfolded until the edges soften. They are kept close, like documents of identity. Lose the card, lose the week. Lose the week, lose strength. Children learn numbers early, not from books, but from portions. How much sugar remains? How many days until the next allotment? Mothers calculate silently, eyes fixed on shelves that grow emptier by the night. Fathers pretend not to notice. The shelves do not lie. They simply stand bare. In markets, queues form before dawn. People bring stools, newspapers, patience. Sometimes the doors open, sometimes they do not. Rumors travel down the line faster than the cold. A truck delayed. A shipment rerouted. A mistake in paperwork. The line holds anyway. Leaving feels riskier than waiting. Inside apartments, heat is rationed like food. Rooms are closed off. Families live together in shrinking spaces. Walls sweat. Windows frost from the inside. People sleep in layers of clothing, listening to pipes groan like tired lungs. At night, stomachs ache louder than memories. Children ask questions that have no safe answers. Why is there no meat? Why is the bread dark? Why does school feel colder than home? Parents answer with stories instead of truth. Stories are warmer. The state speaks of strength, of resilience, of rebuilding faster than anyone thought possible. Posters show smiling workers lifting steel beams into a rising skyline, but posters do not eat. Factories report success. Targets met. Quotas exceeded. Numbers are celebrated. No one asks what those numbers mean at the dinner table. Goods pile up where they are not needed. Machinery without spare parts. Equipment without fuel. Planning is precise. Reality is not. Trains carry steel across the country while villages wait for grain. Efficiency on paper becomes cruelty on the ground. The people adjust. They trade favors. They trade time. They trade pieces of themselves. A coat for potatoes. A watch for flour. A promise for silence. The black market grows not from greed, but from hunger. It exists between whispers, between glances. Everyone knows. No one admits. In the factories, exhaustion deepens. Mistakes increase. A missed bolt. A cracked mold. Machines break. There is no money for replacements. They fix them with wire, with patience, with prayer. Accidents happen. Quietly. A crushed hand. A fall from scaffolding. The siren does not stop. Production cannot stop. The worker is replaced by another name on a list. Another body willing to stand for bread. Soldiers return from war to find a different battlefield. One without medals. Their uniforms hang heavy on thinner bodies. Their eyes search for purpose. They fought for survival. Now survival fights back. Women carry double burdens. In factories by day, in homes by night, they stretch meals, stretch patience, stretch themselves. Their faces age faster than calendars. The children watch everything. They learn how to stand in line, how to stay quiet, how to endure without asking why. School teaches history. Hunger teaches reality. The economy moves, but unevenly, like a cart with broken wheels. Each push forward costs more energy than the last. Behind closed doors, officials argue over shipments and statistics. They speak of logistics and recovery. Outside, people count calories. The distance between decision and consequence grows wider. Winter returns, as it always does, uninterested in ideology. Coal shortages darken neighborhoods. Electricity flickers. Candles become currency. People gather around small flames, sharing silence more than warmth. The factories glow through the night, bright islands in a dark city. They must never stop. Stopping would mean admitting something is wrong, so they roar louder, faster. The sound becomes the heartbeat of a nation trying to outrun its own emptiness. Hunger sharpens the senses. Smells linger. Dreams narrow. People begin to think less about tomorrow and more about the next meal. Survival becomes the goal, not progress, not ideology, just survival. And slowly, without announcement, endurance becomes the defining trait of the people, not because they are strong, but because there is no alternative. As factories continue to roar, shelves remain bare, families wait in lines that stretch longer than hope, and the distance between effort and reward grows thinner with each passing day, pressing down on every breath, every step, every silent calculation made in the dark. The war no longer has trenches, no front lines, no sirens screaming overhead, yet it never ends. It simply changes shape. In distant deserts and frozen seas, new weapons are imagined before old wounds have healed. Missiles replace memories. Blueprints replace graves. The enemy is no longer visible. That makes it more dangerous. Fear becomes abstract and endless. Inside offices lit late into the night, men stare at maps that no longer show borders, only ranges. How far a missile can fly, how fast it can arrive. Minutes become weapons. The decision is never spoken aloud, but everyone understands it. Appear weak and invite destruction. Spend endlessly and survive another year. There is no third option. Factories that once rebuilt cities now rebuild fear. Assembly lines shift quietly. Tractors become tanks. Machinery becomes menace. Steel no longer promises harvests. It promises deterrence. The workers are not told everything. They are told enough. That their labor keeps the nation safe. That sacrifice now prevents blood later. They believe it, because believing is easier than resisting. Missiles rise from concrete silos like prayers no one wants answered. Each one perfect. Each one expensive. The cost is measured in rubles that never reach homes. Budgets swell in secrecy. Civilian needs shrink without explanation. The shelves notice first. Meat disappears. Butter becomes rare. Coffee becomes a rumor. In kitchens, families adjust again. Another substitution. Another reduction. No one connects it directly to the missile in a far-off silo, but they feel the absence all the same. The arms race does not announce itself with battles. It announces itself with shortages, with longer lines, with colder apartments, with the quiet understanding that something essential has been traded away. On television, Parades roll through wide avenues, new rockets glide past cheering crowds. The spectacle is flawless. At home, the radio hums beside an empty table. The contradiction sharpens. Young engineers are pulled into secret programs, brilliant minds locked behind guarded doors. They work with pride, with pressure. Failure is not an option. Success is never enough. Each breakthrough demands another. Technology advances faster than living standards, faster than trust. The future looks powerful from afar, fragile up close. Across the country, entire industries exist only to feed this race. Cities revolve around weapons that will never be used or must never be used. The people sense the paradox without naming it. To keep peace, they must prepare for annihilation. The cost is invisible until it isn't. Schools age. Hospitals wait. Housing repairs are delayed year after year. There is always a reason, always an emergency somewhere else. Money flows upward and outward into steel and secrecy. Down below, lives adjust. Veterans watch young men train for a war no one wants but everyone expects. They recognize the look in their eyes, not fear, resignation. The idea of normal life grows distant. In markets, conversations grow careful, jokes quieter. Everyone knows the state is listening. Everyone knows silence is safer. Questioning military spending feels like questioning survival itself. So, the questions stay inside. The arms race accelerates. New submarines, new bombers, new systems designed to counter systems that do not yet exist. The logic feeds itself. Each move demands a response. Each response costs more. The economy strains under the weight of readiness. Oil money rises and falls like a pulse. When it weakens, panic sets in behind closed doors. Hard currency is guarded like ammunition. Foreign trade becomes a balancing act between pride and necessity. Loans are disguised, dependencies denied. But the arithmetic does not care about ideology. It only counts. In small towns built around defense plants, everything depends on production, jobs, housing, status. When materials run short, anxiety spreads. If the factory slows, the town starves. People work harder, not for bonuses, but to keep the lights on. Mistakes are punished harshly. Delays treated as threats. The pressure bleeds into homes. Marriages strain. Tempers shorten. Children grow up with sirens and slogans instead of lullabies. The enemy becomes a constant presence, unseen, undefined, everywhere. The arms race seeps into dreams, into the way people think about tomorrow. They save not for joy, but for uncertainty. They plan not for growth, but for endurance. Every missile built adds distance between the state and its people. Trust erodes quietly, not because the nation lacks strength, but because strength consumes everything else. The world watches the spectacle and sees power. Inside, the people feel imbalance. They sense that survival has become an obsession, one that demands endless payment. Factories roar louder. Budgets stretch thinner. The race has no finish line, only momentum. And as it continues, the cost deepens, measured not in explosions, but in absence, in choices never made, in lives shaped around preparation rather than promise, as the nation runs faster and faster just to remain standing, pouring its future into weapons meant to preserve it, while something essential slips quietly out of reach, unnoticed at first, then impossible to ignore, pressing closer with each passing year. At first, the numbers obey. They line up neatly in columns, balanced. Confident? On paper, everything works. Growth is projected. Production is reported. Stability is declared. The figures look strong enough to silence doubt. But numbers can lie without speaking. Behind the ink, something shifts. A factory reports output it never truly delivered. A regional office smooths over shortages with optimism. A planner rounds up, then rounds again. No one wants to be the first to admit failure. The system rewards certainty, not truth. So the numbers begin to drift from reality, slowly, carefully, almost politely. Inside ministries, doors close, curtains are drawn, meetings stretch late into the night. Coffee goes cold as charts are redrawn, not to reflect the world as it is, but as it must appear. Every report climbs upward. Every target is met. Yet outside, shelves empty faster than explanations. The contradiction grows. A worker reads the newspaper praising record harvests while standing in line for bread that never arrives. A nurse hears speeches about progress while reusing supplies meant for one-time use. The gap widens between what is said and what is lived. Inflation moves like fog, not dramatic, not sudden, just enough to confuse. Prices inch upward without warning. Wages remain still. Money feels lighter in the hand. People begin to notice that the same ruble buys less each month, then less each week. They stop trusting numbers they cannot see. Savings lose meaning. Years of careful planning dissolve quietly, like ink in water. Pensioners count coins twice, then a third time, hoping the total will change. It never does. The economy is said to be planned, but life resists planning. Trucks break down. Shipments delay. A missing part halts an entire assembly line. There is no backup. There was never budget for redundancy. So production stops, but reports do not. Officials write explanations that travel upward faster than reality travels downward. Delays become temporary adjustments. Failures become restructuring. Language bends to protect the illusion. At higher levels, leaders begin to sense the distortion. They see contradictions between departments, figures that should align but do not. But acknowledging the truth means admitting that control is slipping, and control is everything. So the response is not reform, but pressure. Meet targets or face consequences. The fear flows downward. Managers push workers harder. Workers cut corners. Quality collapses. Products look complete but fail quickly. A refrigerator breaks after months. A tractor stalls mid-harvest. Repairs are constant. Waste grows. The economy becomes heavier, slower, more fragile with each patch. Foreign trade offers brief relief. Hard currency brings options. But it comes with conditions. Exports increase even as domestic needs go unmet. Oil flows outward. Grain follows. The nation earns money abroad while its people tighten belts at home. It is called necessity. People call it betrayal. Loans appear quietly, not announced, not celebrated, just enough to bridge gaps, just enough to delay reckoning. Each loan carries interest. Each interest payment steals from the future. The debt does not scream. It accumulates, like water behind a dam. The planners know. They see the long-term curves bending downward. They understand that growth is slowing, that productivity is stagnating. But the system cannot admit weakness. To admit weakness is to invite collapse. So, the story continues. More reports, more optimism, more insistence that sacrifice now will bring abundance later. Later never arrives. In offices far from factories, decisions are made with imperfect information. They allocate resources based on numbers that flatter rather than inform. Mistakes multiply. A steel plant receives more ore than it can process. A city waits months for building materials sent elsewhere by accident. Correcting these errors requires flexibility the system does not have. Everything is rigid. When one piece breaks, the whole structure trembles. Ordinary people feel the consequences without seeing the cause. They sense inefficiency everywhere. Lines that move too slowly. Services that fail too often. They learn to expect breakdowns. Trust erodes not in speeches, but in daily inconvenience. A train arrives late. A payment is delayed. Promises feel abstract. Reality feels heavy. The black market thrives in the cracks. It does not replace the system. It exposes it. People trade outside official channels because official channels no longer function. The state knows. It pretends not to. Admitting the black market's existence means admitting failure of control. So it punishes symptoms, not causes. Crackdowns come and go. Fear increases. Efficiency does not. Meanwhile, the debt grows. Not just financial, moral debt, psychological debt. People are asked to believe what they can no longer see, to trust numbers that contradict experience. The tension builds quietly. A factory director falsifies data to avoid punishment. A regional official copies last year's report, changing only the date. Small lies stack into structural deception. At the top, leaders receive reports that confirm what they already believe. The system feeds itself reassurance. Reality is filtered out. Warnings exist. They are buried in footnotes. Ignored in meetings. Those who speak too clearly are removed. Silence becomes a survival strategy. The economy continues to function, but without resilience. Any shock threatens collapse. A drop in oil prices, a failed harvest. Suddenly, the margins disappear. There is no buffer, only debt and denial. People feel the shift before it is announced. They sense urgency in voices on the radio, tightness in official language, phrase, change, temporary difficulties, necessary adjustments. The tone hardens. Fear replaces confidence. The numbers that once promised control now expose fragility. Budgets no longer balance. Projections fall short. The arithmetic turns hostile. Every solution creates another problem. Cut spending, and unrest grows. Borrow more, and dependence deepens. There is no clean path forward. The planners stare at equations that refuse to cooperate. The dream they were built to serve no longer fits the math. And as the pressure mounts, as truth presses harder against the walls of illusion, the realization begins to form slowly, painfully, that the system is no longer managing the economy, but chasing it, reacting too late, adjusting too slowly, trapped by its own certainty. As the numbers it once trusted begin to turn against it, one column at a time, tightening the space between belief and collapse. The bill is never delivered in an envelope. It arrives quietly, daily, in kitchens where the light flickers, in stairwells that smell of cold concrete, in faces that have learned not to ask for more. The cost of empire is not announced. It is absorbed. An old man counts pills on a chipped plate, deciding which pain can wait until next month. A woman mends the same coat again, the fabric thinning like her patience. A child outgrows shoes faster than replacements can be found. These are not tragedies, they are routines. The state speaks of strength in abstract terms, but strength, here, means endurance without recognition. Pensions arrive late, sometimes smaller, sometimes not at all. People adjust without protest. They always have. They sell possessions that once marked milestones. A wedding ring, a radio, a photograph frame with no photograph left inside. Memory becomes currency. Hospitals hum with activity and quiet despair. Corridors echo with footsteps that never stop. Doctors improvise. Nurses ration care the way families ration bread. One syringe cleaned and reused. One machine shared between too many lives. No one calls it collapse. They call it difficulty. In schools, classrooms are full, but supplies are thin. Textbooks older than the teachers. Windows taped against drafts. Children wear coats indoors, learning lessons through numb fingers. They are taught about a great future. They memorize it. Outside, that future feels distant. Housing blocks rise quickly, concrete stacked like promises. But the elevators break. The water runs cold. Families crowd into small spaces, waiting for repairs that never come. Maintenance budgets were redirected long ago. The walls listen to arguments whispered late at night. About money. About leaving. About staying because there is nowhere else. Work remains. Always work. Not work that fulfills, but work that sustains just enough. People labor without believing their effort will ever return to them. They work to keep the system moving, even as it moves past them. In factories, layoffs are rare, but stagnation is constant. Wages freeze while prices drift upward. Years pass without progress. Ambition dulls. Talented minds learn to keep expectations low. Safer that way. Artists become technicians. Thinkers become clerks. Dreams are postponed indefinitely. The emotional cost accumulates. Not loud, not dramatic. A quiet fatigue settles into the population. People stop expecting improvement. They plan only to avoid disaster. The future shrinks. In rural towns, youth leave when they can. Those who remain inherit empty houses and aging neighbors. Fields are worked with outdated tools. Yields fall. Food shortages deepen. The cycle tightens. Every sacrifice is justified as temporary, but temporary stretches into decades. A generation grows up knowing only restraint. They are told it is noble. They feel it is endless. The state demands loyalty. It offers stability in return. But stability without opportunity becomes a cage. People feel it in subtle ways. In the hesitation before speaking honestly, in the careful choice of words at work, in the instinct to keep thoughts private. Fear does not dominate. Weariness does. The emotional contract between citizen and state thins. not broken, stretched. When small reforms are promised, hope flickers briefly, then dims. Too many promises have expired unused. Trust becomes conditional. Older generations remember worse times and urge patience. Younger ones feel time slipping away. The gap widens. Families sit together at night, sharing stories from the past because the future feels unreliable. Television glows in dark rooms, projecting images of prosperity and power. The contrast is sharp. Pride mixes with frustration. How can a nation capable of such scale struggle to provide such basics? The question lingers unspoken. People internalize blame. They work harder. They complain less. They assume failure is personal, not systemic. This quiet acceptance becomes the greatest cost. The loss of expectation, the loss of belief that effort leads to reward. Lives are lived carefully, cautiously, without room for risk. Entrepreneurship fades. Innovation slows, not because people lack ideas, but because failure carries too high a price. Every misstep could mean hunger, so people choose safety. The system stagnates further. The weight of unpaid costs presses down, not in one crushing moment, but in 1,000 small ones. A missed birthday gift, a delayed repair, a postponed dream. These moments accumulate into a national mood, a sense that life is something to be endured rather than expanded. The empire stands tall in ceremonies, but in private, people feel small. They measure success not by achievement, but by survival. And survival, after so long, stops feeling like victory. The human invoice grows heavier with each passing year, not written in ledgers, written in posture, in tone. In the way people stop looking too far ahead, the cost is paid in lost potential, in silent compromises, in futures quietly narrowed to fit shrinking expectations. As millions continue to carry the weight without ever seeing the bill, absorbing it into their bodies and routines, day after day, while the nation moves forward on paper, and the people stand still, holding together a system that demands everything and gives back just enough to keep them waiting. It does not end with gunfire. No tanks roll through capitals. No final stand is made. The collapse arrives quietly, a morning like any other. Cold air, familiar streets. People wake expecting routines to hold. They do not. The signs are subtle at first. A bank closed without explanation. A currency exchange rate whispered instead of posted. Money hesitates. In offices, clerks stare at screens that do not update. Numbers freeze. Budgets approved yesterday no longer apply today. No announcement explains it. There is only confusion. In markets, sellers stop accepting cash. They shrug. They do not know the value anymore. Paper feels lighter in the hand, not physically. Psychologically, the illusion breaks. For years, the system survived on momentum, on habit, on belief that tomorrow would resemble yesterday. Now tomorrow refuses to cooperate. Factories slow, not because of sabotage, but because orders no longer make sense. What should be produced? Who will pay? In which currency? Questions stack faster than answers. Managers wait for directives that never arrive. Phones ring without clarity. The center hesitates. The structure that once decided everything now struggles to decide anything. Power disperses unevenly. Regional leaders improvise. Local officials make deals. Rules blur. Certainty dissolves. People feel it immediately, not as panic, as disorientation. A pensioner waits in line, unsure if today's payment will still buy bread. A worker receives wages that lose value before the week ends. The rhythm of life stutters. For decades, the system promised stability above all else. Now stability evaporates. Television broadcasts feel strained. Language grows careful. Words like transition replace plan. The tone shifts. Citizens sense it even if they cannot articulate it. Something fundamental has changed. The empire's strength was never just military. It was predictability, knowing where one stood. Now, no one knows. Borders feel less solid. Institutions feel hollow. The arithmetic finally speaks louder than ideology. The state cannot pay what it owes, not to banks, not to regions, not to its own people. The numbers no longer add up. Years of hidden debt surface at once. Loans that postponed collapse now demand repayment. Foreign creditors wait patiently. Interest does not negotiate. The currency slips further. Prices jump between morning and evening. People rush to spend money before it becomes meaningless. Shelves empty faster than they ever did during shortages. This time, it is not distribution. It is disbelief. Savings vanish overnight. Lifetimes of caution erased by recalculation. The betrayal feels intimate, not political. Personal. Trust breaks. Not with a speech, with a receipt. Factories lay off workers quietly. No ceremony. Just locked gates and unanswered questions. Entire towns feel suspended, unsure whether to keep functioning or begin leaving. The social contract frays. Police hesitate. Courts stall. Authority no longer flows cleanly downward. It pools, leaks. People begin relying on networks instead of institutions. Family, friends, neighbors. Survival becomes local. National identity feels distant. Flags still hang. They feel symbolic rather than protective. In government buildings, files pile up untouched. Decisions are delayed until delay becomes decision. No one wants to own the collapse. Everyone waits for someone else to speak first. History pauses in uncertainty. Old certainties vanish faster than new ones appear. Some celebrate. They speak of freedom, of possibility. Others feel only loss. The ground beneath them has shifted without warning. Their skills no longer translate. Their loyalty no longer guarantees security. They are unmoored. Soldiers watch events unfold with quiet confusion. They train to defend borders, not economies. Their discipline has no target. Their purpose blurs. Weapons sit unused. The war ends without being fought. Bureaucrats stare at empty budgets. Economists argue on television. No one agrees on a path forward. Too many years were spent delaying this moment. Now time compresses. Weeks feel like years. The old system dissolves not because it is overthrown, but because it is abandoned. People stop expecting it to work. That is the true end. When belief withdraws, when compliance becomes optional, when rules feel irrelevant, the empire collapses inward. Not loudly, gradually. The silence is unsettling. No final decree announces the end. Just a realization spreading from kitchen tables to factory floors to government halls. It is over. Or something else has begun. People stand in doorways, unsure which direction leads forward. The future feels open, but unstable. Freedom feels heavy. The past lingers. Memories of endurance do not disappear easily. They shape how people move, how they trust, how they hope. The collapse leaves no clear villain, no single moment to point to. Only accumulation. Years of sacrifice deferred, warnings ignored, costs absorbed. The arithmetic did not destroy the empire in one strike. It waited, patient, relentless, and when the moment came, it did not shout. It simply refused to work anymore, leaving behind a vast silence where certainty once lived, a landscape of unanswered questions, suspended between what was promised and what remains. As people look around at familiar streets that now feel unfamiliar, standing inside history as it pauses, breath held, unsure whether the fall has ended or whether it is still quietly unfolding.